The pressure began before dawn. At 5:47 a.m., Maya Chen's eyes snapped open, her mind already churning through the day's obligations before her body had fully woken. AP Chemistry exam on Friday. SAT practice test Saturday morning. The scholarship application due Sunday at midnight. Her mother's voice echoed in her head from the night before. Stanford doesn't accept Bs, Maya. Remember your cousin Jenny? She settled for UC Davis. Don't settle. Maya swung her legs over the side of her bed, the motion mechanical, and reached for the anxiety medication hidden in her sock drawer, 2 pills she would take without water, swallowing the evidence of her failure to cope. By the time she walked into school at 7:15 a.m., the mask was firmly in place. Her smile was bright, her posture straight, her dark hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail that she had redone 3 times until every strand cooperated. "Hey, Maya," called out Jessica from the lockers. "You killed that history presentation yesterday. How do you always stay so calm?" Maya laughed a light, practiced sound and shrugged. "I just pretend everyone's in their underwear," she said, and the group laughed with her. Nobody noticed the faint tremor in her hands as she adjusted her backpack straps, or the way her eyes darted to the clock, already calculating how many minutes until she could be alone again. The morning passed in a blur of note-taking and hand-raising, of correct answers and approving nods from teachers who had long ago stopped calling on anyone else. In calculus, Mr. Davidson returned their exams. 100%, he announced, sliding the paper toward her with a rare smile. "Perfect score, Maya. Keep this up and you're looking at valedictorian." The words landed like stones in her stomach. Valedictorian. Another title to defend, another target on her back. She smiled and said thank you, and when the boy behind her whispered "show off," she felt her chest constrict. Not because the insult hurt she was used to those, but because a small, shameful part of her agreed with him. Lunchtime was the hardest. She sat with her friends at the usual table, picking at a protein bar she couldn't taste while they chatted about college visits and prom dresses. "Did you apply for the national merit thing yet?" asked Kevin across the table, and Maya nodded, even though the application sat unfinished on her laptop. The essay prompts reduced her to tears last night at 2 a.m. "You've got it made," Kevin added, shaking his head. "Some of us are actually stressed." Maya laughed again, the sound hollow in her own ears, and excused herself to the bathroom. Inside the stall, she pressed her forehead against the cool metal of the door and breathed 1, 2, 3, 4 until the shaking stopped. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother, tutoring at 4. "Don't be late." Maya closed her eyes and saw, behind her lids, a long, dark hallway with no doors. It happened on a Tuesday. Not during an exam or a college interview, but in the middle of third period English, while discussing the symbolism in The Great Gatsby. Maya had her hand raised. She always had her hand raised, but when the teacher called on her, the words wouldn't come. She opened her mouth, and the sentence she had rehearsed dissolved into static. The classroom lights seemed too bright. Her heart slammed against her ribs like a trapped animal. "Maya," the teacher said, and she heard the question from very far away, as if underwater. Then she was falling, her chair scraping backward, and the last thing she saw before everything went dark was the confused faces of her classmates, their mouths forming her name like a warning. She woke in the nurse's office with a cold compress on her forehead and a blood pressure cuff squeezing her arm. "Just a fainting spell," the nurse said gently. "Low blood sugar, probably. Have you been eating enough?" Maya nodded, even though she couldn't remember the last real meal she'd had days, maybe, surviving on coffee and granola bars between study sessions. Her phone was buzzing relentlessly in her backpack. 3 missed calls from her mother, 14 text messages. She scrolled through them without reading, the words blurring into a single roar of expectation. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Your tutor is waiting. Don't embarrass me." Maya turned the phone off and closed her eyes again, and for the first time in years, she let herself cry. Her mother arrived within 20 minutes, heels clicking against the linoleum floor like a countdown. "She's fine," the nurse was saying, but Mrs. Chen was already pulling Maya toward the door, her grip tight on her daughter's arm. "This is what happens when you don't sleep enough," she hissed in the car. "I told you to manage your time better. Did you finish the scholarship essay?" Maya sat in the passenger seat, still in her school clothes, still smelling the antiseptic of the nurse's office, and felt something inside her crack, not break, not yet, but fracture along fault lines that had been forming for years. "Mom," she said quietly, and her voice sounded like a stranger's. "I can't." Her mother glanced at her, puzzled. "Can't what?" Meyer opened her mouth to say everything. "Can't breathe, can't sleep, can't remember who I am without a grade attached," but what came out was smaller. "Can't go to tutoring tonight." Her mother's silence was worse than any scream. That night, Maya didn't study. She sat on her bedroom floor, surrounded by textbooks and highlighters and the crumbling remains of her perfect facade, and she called the only person she thought might understand. Leo picked up on the second ring. He wasn't a top student, he barely passed most of his classes, but he had once told her, in the quiet of the art room after school, that he took medication for anxiety too. "It's not a weakness," he had said, and she had nodded and changed the subject. Now, with her voice raw and her face streaked with tears, she told him everything: the panic attacks before every exam, the way she counted calories like points on a test, the recurring nightmare where she opened her acceptance letter to Stanford and found it blank. Leo listened without interrupting, and when she finally stopped talking, he said, "Stay on the line. I'm coming over." And Maya, who had never asked for help in her entire life, whispered, "Okay." Therapy started the following week. Leo drove her to the appointment, a small office tucked between a dentist and a nail salon, where a woman named Dr. Reeves asked her questions that no one had ever thought to ask before. "What do you enjoy?" she said at one point, and Maya stared at her blankly. "I don't understand the question," she admitted. "Dr. Reeves smiled. "Not what do you achieve. What do you enjoy?" Maya thought about it for a long time. Reading, maybe, before it became homework. Drawing, before her mother told her it was a waste of time. The way the sky looked at sunset from her bedroom window, pink and orange and utterly indifferent to GPAs. "I don't know anymore," she said finally, and Dr. Reeves nodded as if that answer, too, was perfectly acceptable. The changes were slow, almost imperceptible at first. Maya dropped one AP class, just one, and the world did not end. She started sleeping 7 hours a night, then 8, and discovered that exhaustion was not, in fact, a prerequisite for success. She joined Leo in the art room after school, not because it would look good on an application, but because she liked the way charcoal felt against paper, the way mistakes could be smudged into shadows instead of erased. Her grades dipped: an A- in physics, a B+ in calculus, and she waited for the shame to crush her. Instead, she felt something unexpected: relief. Like a fever breaking. Like coming up for air. On graduation day, Maya walked across the stage to accept her diploma, not as valedictorian, but as third in her class, a distinction that would have devastated her a year ago. Her mother cheered from the audience, louder than anyone else, and Maya saw that she was crying. After the ceremony, Leo found her on the lawn, still wearing her cap and gown, and handed her a small sketchbook. Inside, on the first page, he had drawn a girl sitting on a bedroom floor surrounded by textbooks, a single crack of light coming through the window. The girl was smiling. Not the bright, practiced smile Maya had worn for years, but something smaller and truer, a smile that had been earned the hard way. Maya looked at the drawing for a long time, then closed the book and slipped it into her pocket. The pressure hadn't disappeared. It would never fully disappear. But for the first time, she understood that she could carry it without being crushed. And that, she realized, was a different kind of perfect.